Hey everybody, this is Meredith Loughran. I am the Comic Newb, and this is a new show with the Comic Book Advocate Network and under the banner of Geek Insider. So welcome to our show. This is a new time slot for us. I'm a little bit nervous because I live in Florida, and this is right around the time that we get our normal thunderstorms. But today I have a great panel of guests. The topic is actually how to find the right artist for your story and vice versa. So we have a really good mix of people. I've got Dre Lorenzo Molinari, Luke Stone, Travis Gibb, and Ted Davies. And we're going to pop them in here one at a time so that they can introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with, let's bring in Ted and put you on the big screen here. Go ahead, Ted.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ted Davies. I am the owner and operator of Ted Davies Artistry. I have written 2 books, Retrieve, science fiction thriller, in Albino, Zulu. And I do a lot of different artwork, and I would love to meet you guys. Check me out on teddaviesartistry.com.
All right, and we're going to get in here, Luke. Let's put you on the big screen.
All right.
Introduce yourself.
My name's Luke Stone. I am. You can find me at lukestonestudios.com, and I am the writer and artist behind a book called Hybrids: The Sons of Gods. And I'm actually working on a book right now with Travis Gibb, who you'll meet here just in a second, called Voodoo Nations. And so we're pretty excited about those releases and all the things that are coming up.
Very cool.
Hi,
Andrea.
I'm Dre Lorenzo Molinari. I'm a writer with Caliber Comics. I have a series that I co-write with my son, Roberto. It's called The Shepherd. We've come out with 3 novels so far with with that series. I also work as an editor, both for Caliber Comics, where I do submissions work and project work. I also work extensively with Scout Comics in Fort Myers, Florida. And I have like 17 titles under me there. I'll enjoy that quite a lot. And then lastly, I work with Amigo Comics, which is out of Malaga, Spain. And that really gives me an opportunity to work with a lot of international creators. I enjoy immensely.
Okay, and we're bringing in Travis Gibb. Yep, there you go.
I'm here. Andrea also is our editor, actually, for Voodoo Nations. He didn't announce that, but that's okay. We'll allow. He has more exciting things like Scout and Caliber. But I am Travis Gibb. I'm most known for Broke Down and 4 Dead Bodies. However, I've also done The Advocator. I have a book coming out called Cthulhu Invades Oz, which a lot of people are talking about. And like Luke said, we have a new book coming out in July called Voodoo Nations, and that's going to be really cool.
All right, and we've got our whole panel here. So thank you so much, you guys, for taking the time to spend with the noob here. In case you're not familiar with the journey and the concept behind the Comic Newb, it was one of these things where I was invited into the Comic Book Advocates Network by Rob Anderson. And I told him, I said, I don't know shit about comic books, right? And he says, don't worry, you do advocating and we really like you and stuff. I'm like, oh, that's great, but what am I going to do here? And it was like one of those things where it was overnight. I woke up in the middle of the night and I says, I got it, because this is something that I've always wanted to do, but I got away from it because of life, family, job, and everything. And I said, you know what? I am never too old to start something new. And so this seemed like the perfect opportunity to grab that and just say, you know what, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to create a comic book, I really want to get the foundation of how it works, the business side of things, the creative side of things. So I really appreciate all 4 of you coming into the panel and speaking with me today, because this is part of the journey, and I have given myself 1 year to actually go from concept to creation and actually have hopefully a comic book at the end. I'm not going to say hopefully, I'm going to say I will do it, because I'm committed to doing it, and I hope each and every one of you and everybody who's listening holds me accountable. That being said, we've got a really good mix of artists, writers, editors, sitting right here in the room with me, and I am honored. Here's the thing. When I say I have a story, I'm sure you guys have heard that a million times. I have a story. I want to make it a comic book. Huh. Will you draw for me? And there's so much more to that. You know, I think that writers have to find the right match. But how? How do we do that besides going into DeviantArt and looking through the thousands of amazing artists and stuff? I know that there's more to, and I'm going to call Ted out in a little bit, but I know that there's more to cover art. You have to get the interior art as well, and you know, your thumbnails and all of these things. What would a writer do, or an artist do, who's kind of like solo? They're working on their own. How do they find people to work with if they don't have the talent to do the whole project themselves? Who can speak to that?
Start. Oh wait, go ahead,
Andrea.
You can start.
You sure? Okay. Well, one thing I would do is, if you have access to somebody who works as an editor, that's the first person that I would knock on the door. Now, knowing what I know, I wouldn't have known it sitting in your chair, when I started this back in 2011. But now, knowing what I know, you want to talk to an editor. So I would be somebody that you should talk to, because I interact with artists all the time. Whether I work with them personally, I can't tell you how many times I get artists say, I know you're an editor. I know you interact with writers. I'm looking for work. Will you, and I tell them, yeah, absolutely. Send me a digital portfolio. Send me a link that I can then forward on as writers come to me looking for artists. And it happens all the time. So that would be the first piece of advice, that I would give, because I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't recommend going to DeviantArt for an artist. There are lots of good artists there, but I wouldn't start there as my place, because there are a lot of talented artists. Okay, but you need to find a finisher. You need to find somebody who's going to finish the job. So that you want to find somebody who is, ideally has done this kind of work before, and that understands, what it takes. So when they look at a script, they can, execute that script. And so that would be my first thing, is I'm looking for somebody who's already doing this work. I'm not looking for somebody who's throwing some concept art up there on DeviantArt.
Mm-hmm. And Luke, you said that you had something to add to that.
Yeah, I would say it's quite a bit of trial and error when it comes to the whole artist and writer relationship. If definitely, I kind of agree. DeviantArt is there's a lot of great artists there, but you want someone that actually has completed a book and understands this whole sequential art thing. It can be great when you're starting out, finding someone that's also trying to start out, but that can also make it very difficult too to really capture the essence of the book and things like that. As a writer, from the writer side of me, I don't draw all of the books that I write. So one of the things that I'll do is I will try to figure out the genre that I'm working in, or the look and feel that I have in my head, and then I'll try to find an artist that fits that. And then I'll start making a short list of artists to talk to them about, coming into the project and work on it from there. And vice versa. Like, I've had people come to me and they've asked me, hey, will you be interested in drawing this? And I'll look at it. I'm like, well, what do you have in mind? And so they're like, oh, well, I imagine this or that. And I'm like, well, that's not me, or that is me, and you can tell pretty quick if, like what you're looking for in those things. And it all comes down to that relationship. Is it, is the writing going to complement the art, and is the art going to complement the writing? And usually if you can find a good writer artist team like that, those relationships can last for a long time. And you see some of the best creative teams in history have been a great writer, great artist that just complemented each other and understood each other well.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I really agree with everything that Andrea says. Finishers are really, really important. There is so many times where I've had false starts when I first started, where I was hiring people. And we'd start a comic, we'd get a few pages done, and then they would disappear, and I'd never hear from them again. Sometimes it's, payment issue. Sometimes it's time issue. So you really want people who really are serious about this. But the other thing that's really important when you're picking out an artist is a matrix that I do as marketing. So because I'm a marketer, I don't have to have someone who's necessarily from America as an artist. So I can pay a little bit less, because if you go overseas, you pay a little less, get sometimes even better quality art. However, they're not going to promote you at all. So it's going to be all on you to promote your book when it gets time to Kickstart, or pushing it to Scout or Caliber or any of these publishers, or vice versa, where you could have you could pay more and get an artist in America, but at the same time, are they going to promote you? Are you guys going to be collaborating on this, or are you guys just going to be a work for hire? Because there's a lot of artists out there that are just work for hire. They don't really have a desire to collaborate with you. They just want to get the paycheck. They want to get it done. And there's nothing, I don't even think there's anything wrong with that. It's just, it depends on the kind of story you want to say and what kind of relationship you want going forward. Obviously, a collaboration is better.
Yeah, Ted, anything to go with that?
I have to say that you have sequential art and you've got cover art. You have to have a marriage there, because not everybody is a sequential artist. To match what others were saying here. I think that doing a cover like we did with Luke on this side, seeing the work that digitally what everybody here does to what I do traditionally doesn't always fit the story. My stories are meant to fit in what I do, So you have to find something that where you're comfortable, but communication is key, whether it's, like Travis said, overseas or wherever. Communication is key no matter what you're doing. Doesn't matter who's drawing, because art's subjective, period. But you have to make sure you got some type of communication that you feel comfortable with.
So I kind of want to go around the room and see, tell me about your very first comic book, the one that you created. And it could have been something in, I don't know, maybe middle school. Maybe it's something you drew out yourself with stick figures and you had some kind of a story. I'm sure each one of you have some kind of story like that, because from that point to where you are now, I mean, there's this whole transition. I mean, for me right now, just the two terms finisher and sequential art, I've heard them before, but not so much in comic books. So again, I'm starting from square one. I am like 000, not even 101. There are certain things in my history where I've been in publishing, but it was newspaper. So I understand pagination and layout and things like that. But when it comes to the lingo, that's actually going to be next week. So I'm taking notes here as you guys go. I go, oh, I got to look that up. Oh, I can add that to my list. But I do want to hear about the very first comic book, and I don't care, or the comic strip even, whether it was drawn out on a napkin. Can you share a story like that?
Yeah. Mine was called F-Dome, Future Defenders of Modern Earth. I still remember to this day. Cool. I had Plasmus. She was one of my main characters, a guy named Bodybag, who has since been reimagined into a pretty sick and demented villain for a new series, for this series that I'm working on. And but yeah, I drew it on 8.5 by 11 copy paper, and I colored it in with pastels and made my own cover, stapled it together. And I didn't have a photocopier, so I had to draw it like 4 or 5 times, and so I had to try to copy all my own stuff so that I can sell 4 or 5 copies to my friends at school. And so that was my first one, and it was really bad. And so
sounds great.
I mean, everything about it was bad. It was just really, really bad.
We've got to start somewhere. Andrea, how about you?
Well, at first, when you asked that question, I thought about describing the experience of doing The Shepherd, because it was kind of dumb. I write novels. I wrote a novel before it started, and so I'd written a novel that was turned out to be illustrated afterwards. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'll do a graphic novel. Well, I would not recommend that you start out with a graphic novel, because it's risky as hell. I would definitely say, if you can be part of an anthology, start with a short story like that. And, and I'm thinking, of course, from a writer, even an artist's point of view. But I realized as I was thinking about it is that I actually had done comic strips back when I was in high school, back in Michigan. Went to a Catholic high school, Luke M. Powers in Flint, which is my hometown. Yeah. And they had the high school newspaper. And at that point in my life, I was heavily influenced by Doonesbury. And so my comic strip, which dealt with life at in high school, and all the idiosyncrasies of that had very much of a Doonesbury-esque look, in terms of its art style. I did a lot of art in high school, but and I went away to college. That kind of went by the wayside, but the writing never left. The writing was always there. So now I have copies stowed away of some of these comic strips, and they will, rot wherever they are. I don't mention of ever letting those see the light of day at this stage.
Your legacy.
Yeah.
Ted, how about you?
When I was a kid, Beetle Bailey, it was the shapes of Beetle Bailey and Garfield that, I was talking yesterday with Brian Morris on the interview that we did. He was kind enough to do with me. And we talked about just the different things that we saw in Sunday comics versus what we saw on the spin rack, And Beetle Bailey was, for some reason, I don't know why, because I'm not a big military guy, but it was just that the aesthetic of it, I guess. I don't know. And I started drawing that, and I started getting into animation. And what I did was, we all did the books where we'd flip them. We'd do each individual pose and so it made it look like it was running or whatever. And that's what I started. And I think that probably would have been the first, if you want to call it, comic book or comic strip that I did. And it was called, and this isn't a very good title. Dirk the Jerk was the title, and it was very. He was a real attitude case, but it was fun. I don't think I have them. My parents kept a lot of my artwork, thank God, but I don't think I have it. So, but yeah.
And Travis, how about you? What was like your first comic, either strip or comic book that you created, if you can remember?
I'm still hoping to create one. I look forward to it. No. So for me, there's kind of two stories that kind of overline. So as a kid, I grew up in New Hampshire, and where the Ninja Turtles are from. So Ninja Turtles are ingrained in our society over there, like literally the place that they're from. I'm from Rochester. They're from Dover, which is like a city over. So I could draw Ninja Turtles really well. So I used to draw little panels of Ninja Turtles, but literally that's the only thing I could draw well. And I actually think that I actually could be a decent artist if I didn't learn my form from Ninja Turtles. So my sculpt is that, so I can't go to regular people because I need to draw the big bubble and the big bubble. But anyway, so that was a lot of it. But after that, I did a book for Government Bodies, which is a small company called Across the Pond. They did a 3-issue miniseries, very crime noir. And I fell in love with them at a con. And I asked them if I could do a backup, and they let me do a 4-page backup. So I called one of my friends in high school, who's now a really, really well-known tattoo artist up there, and he did a 4-page story for me. That is beautiful to this day. And I was super lucky that we were both young, both super excited, because literally everything I tried to do after that was really, really hard. And I wonder if I didn't have the right, two people with the same drive to get that done the first time, if I would have even done this, because like the next 6 things I did after that were all 3 pages. We're not going to work on this. 3 pages. We're not going to work on this. So that was rough.
Yeah. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a treat. This is my very first one.
Cool.
I love it.
Yeah. Good line quality there. That's great.
Oh. And we're learning Python, which is miserable. So
that was actually a challenge. I was on a blogging platform, and they were like, "Let's do a challenge to write a cartoon," and I was just like, "I don't draw." So it was like, all right, well, what was I doing at the time? It was like, oh, I'm going to learn, I'm going to try and learn programming. That didn't happen either. But so a little bit of drawing there, but I figured I'd share that as my first attempt at a strip. But so I guess the thing that I want to dive into is the fact that it's really hard to find those people. And Luke Stone and Travis Gibb, you guys are working on Voodoo Nations. Now, your comic books, Hybrid Sons of Gods and, Broke Down in 4 Dead Bodies, are 2 totally different types of stories. totally different type of art. How in the world did you guys get together and say, let's do Voodoo Nations?
Travis actually pitched the script because I was at the time up until yesterday about 4 or 5 o'clock. I was working at a company called Starcross Comics as the project manager, and we were looking at trying to recruit some new stories, some things to come in, and they had a whole lot of superhero books, and so we're trying to find some other kind of stories. And Travis says, I got this story that I have to find an artist and everything for, but it's called Voodoo Nations, and he gave me the pitch. But as soon as I read it, I was like, I could see the panels, I could see like the images in my head and stuff, and I was like, I can draw this. Like this, I think that my style, I think that kind of the heavier, darker style that had been moving towards the 5th issue of my series, that would work well with this. And I said, I think I can draw this. And so we did some concept art and stuff like that. And Travis can take the conversation from there.
Yeah. So I had this bad habit. I love people, and I cannot see people struggle. So I saw Luke's pitched his new hybrids, and it's a 5th issue. And I looked at how much he brought in for his last ones, and I called him up because I'm going to take a little step back from where Luke was. And I literally got Luke on the phone and said, hey, can you talk to me? And I gave him some Kickstarter advice. And then I continued to give him Kickstarter advice because I just hate people who work really hard and no one just told them, you need to do this, this, and this to do it. And I told Luke, do this, this, and this, and you'll have a better result. And he had a better result. So I called him up, and I'm not taking all the credit because he did a lot of interviews and a lot of other stuff too. I just showed him a better layout, a better fly track, if you will, on how to do it. And through those conversations, I learned more about Starcross, and I was like, maybe I want to do a Starcross book. And I pitched him a superhero book actually first. And then I sat on it probably 2 days, and I messaged him, and I was like, I don't want to do a superhero book. I don't do superhero books. I love superheroes, but I want to write Spider-Man. I want to write this. This book is really great, but if you want me to work for Starcross, you want me to do something, you and I are both because Luke and I are both pastors. You may not know that. I'm a marketplace minister, so I don't run a congregation like Luke does, but I run small groups that talk to business owners about how they run their business. So that's what I do, and Luke runs a congregation. I was like, if we're going to do that, let's take a cut on religion, but I want people to see a very, very different side of religion. And I'm going to go dark because Broke Down and 4 Dead Bodies is dark. There's lots of swearing, lots of vulgarity. I'm going to go dark. If you're willing to go dark with me, let me pitch you an idea. I pitched him the idea. He liked it. We started going for it. And me and Luke really from the ground up really wanted to break outside of our box. So, and I think that's kind of why, because Voodoo Nations is no longer with Starcross. I'm going to kind of announce that here. It's no longer with Starcross. We took it back, but we wanted to do everything different. That's why we contacted Andrea about editing. We didn't know Andrea. We knew he did a lot of stuff, but Luke and I are both very good friends with Chuck, who's great. My wife edits Broke Down. We have editors in our crew, but we really wanted to step outside of our box. And with the COVID allowed us to step outside. So we asked Andrea, we knew his background. We looked up who he was, and he has is it a master's in theology, or what is your level?
It's actually a PhD.
Maybe PhD. So we're like, that's perfect. So let's do this because we're writing a religious story, but we're not going to do those religious tropes. It's going to be dark. Bad things are going to happen. It's going to be more realistic than anything happens, but there will be some religious elements in it. So that's how we collaborated and decided to do this 4-issue miniseries and really get together.
Mm-hmm. And actually, before I even put this panel together, I had no idea that Andrea was part of that the hoodoo. I keep saying hoodoo. I meant Voodoo Nations realm here. So that's really cool that happened. So Andrea, when it comes to, because you do writing, you do editing, not so much art, I don't think. How is it? How is it that you decide on who you're going to work with? And then also, if you could speak to the Shepherd, because that is a lot of artwork. It's not a 12-page, 16-page comic book. So finding the artist that would be there for the entire project. That must have been interesting in finding the right artist for that.
Yeah, that's why I told you I wouldn't recommend doing that the first time out. I'm laughing because it was
What
just,
not to do.
you know, but I had taken on, you got to keep in mind is that I had done big projects. The Shepherd graphic novel, I think it was my 5th book. So I had taken on, you know, serious projects and done, you know, scholarly research projects and stuff like that. And before the Shepherd graphic novel, I had done an illustrated novel called Climbing the Dragon's Ladder. And that was my first experience of working with a hired artist. And I loved it. I really did. I thought it was that sense of working with somebody else, getting their view on things, you know, and I love art anyway. So it was not, no one was having to twist my arm to do it. It was a pleasure to do it. So that was, you know, when I came to the Shepherd, I felt like I was ready to take on something like that. I was not, but, you know, but I did, you know, so, and there it is. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute, but when you're looking to pick out an artist, I'll actually send this to you. I actually wrote this down because I wanted to kind of like memorialize what I've learned so far and then be able to look back on it. But I would say that the characteristics that you're looking for in a writer is that they have to have a good work ethic. And the way that you know that they have a good work ethic is what have they done? You know, look at the work that they've accomplished previously. If you're and again, remember that there are cover artists and sequential artists, and sometimes you have artists that do both. But if they have a track record of doing only cover arts or portraits, don't hire them to do sequential. That's asking for trouble. It's like you're tempting the universe. You know, it's like bending over in front of the kid in junior high and expecting them not to kick in the pants. It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do that to yourself. So look for somebody with a work ethic, has got a proven track record of doing what you want out of them. You know, the second thing I would say is reliability. Talk to the people that they've worked with before. You know, do they you know, do they hit the marks that they say they're going to hit? And if they don't, and this happens, this is real life happens. So, you know, an artist may say, look, I'm going to get it, you know, have these pages to you by this date. But real life happens. Their little child gets sick, you know, maybe they're, you know, 100 different things can happen. And, but what you want to see is the track record of that artist communicating with you and saying, you know what, I know I said I was going to have it by this date, but here's what's happened. Here's when I can get it to you. That's professional right there. That's a professional says, hey, life happens. I'm sorry about this. You know, I'll make it up to you. Here's what's going to happen. And keep in mind, as a writer, you need to be able to give that same professionalism back to the artist and say, you know, and I'll get to that in a moment about one of the big ways you can be a professional back to the artist. The third characteristic that I would say, so I've said work ethic, reliability, and affordability. And affordability, of course, changes with each person. What is your budget? You know, and be honest about what your budget is. If you know, you have to sit down and figure out if you have a 24-page comic, you know, what do you think you can afford to pay that artist? You know, and is it going to be a black and white? You know, or are you going to have, you know, someone do pencils and inks, somebody do colors, somebody do lettering? You got to think about what that's going to cost you in terms of a budget. You know, and again, that's where talking to an editor or another person who's done this before, they can start to give you a sense of what you can expect. I mean, a good letterer, you should expect to pay $10 to $15 a page for a good letterer. Now, do the math. 24 pages of a story, and now you've got a ballpark figure for your lettering. Coloring, you know, I talked to a couple of colorists the other day. You know, you're looking at 25 to 35 for a pretty solid colorist. You know, and then your page art, you got to figure out. You know, I mean, I can show you artists from Italy that are doing $70 a page. You know, for pencils and inks. I can also show you guys that are asking $200 a page. You know, and you have to look at the work and look at their track record, what you can afford, all that. You know, all that has to go down. Now, remember I said a few minutes ago about the professionalism, about writer to artist. and I want, if you're a writer and you're doing this, I want you to listen to me clearly. Pay your artist.
Amen.
Okay?
Preach, brother.
Not mess with your artist. It's stupid. Okay. You pay your artist when you say you're going to pay them immediately. And if something comes up, because life happens, you get on the phone and you tell the artist, you know, and you treat them like a human being, and you make sure that, you know, that you're, if like, let's say, for example, if, you know, a car or something happens to the car and you have the money that was going to go to the artist has to go to the car, you know, I have a paycheck coming in next week. I'll be able to get you your money at that point. If you want to put pencils down until then and work on something else that is a paying gig, totally understand. A lot of times when you treat the artist like that, they're saying, you know what, I got your back. I'll continue to do this. But you then make sure that when you said you're going to pay them, boom, that is, and don't ever make them ask for it. Don't ever make them ask for it. That kind of behavior undermines trust. It is in your interest as a writer to build up a trust with your artist so that they know that when you say something, you're going to do it. Your word is solid, iron, you know, and that's really important. When you build up that kind of relationship, I've seen over and over again, artists are good people. They love what they do. They want to do this. You know, they have to eat, ironically enough. So you have to pay them, you know, but if you treat them the right way, you know, repeatedly, I've seen they go the extra mile for you. But that's where that professionalism, you just cannot, you know, and just be honest. If you cannot afford a $200 a page artist, then don't try to hire one, for God's sake. And don't do the thing that drives me crazy. This whole thing is, I'll pay you on the back end, a cut of the back end. Holy crap. Mm-hmm. Listen to me. There is no friggin' back end, okay? There is no back end. So forget that. You know, it's like, yeah, maybe lightning will strike and you'll get picked up by Netflix. God bless you if that happens. But realistically, you know, if there is a back end, it's not going to be a big one. So figure out a budget that's legit, that's an upfront, and pay your people. Just do it the right way, you know. And that's a rep that you start to build out there in the industry. I will tell you this right now. I've worked with a lot of artists, and you can have their contact information. You can have the contact information of every artist I've ever worked for. You want to know why? Because they all got paid in full. And that's what you need to do as an artist, is set that, you know, as an artist, you, from the, you know, the graphic side of it, deliver what you say you're going to deliver. As a writer, same thing. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but I feel very strong. As you can see, I feel very strongly about it. You got to treat people the right way.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said about, I think, the pricing of things. You know, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, I've got a story, and then you know, and another person saying, I'm an artist. And, you know, I've gone into a couple of these groups where they're trying to collaborate. Well, they say they are, but they're really shilling their content. They're really shilling their work and not really bringing much depth to the conversation. So the people who have actually succeeded in making a comic book or a series, you know, they're looking at all these people like, oh, you stupid little peon, but they're not actually helping anything. And that's what I'm hoping that this does, is that, you know, bringing those lessons and that bit of wisdom out to the people who are viewing this now and in the future. You know, I would like to try and keep this as evergreen as possible. So again, this is from a previous panel that we had where we were talking about the importance of networking and finding those people, because everybody here, you know, I've said, hey, I've written stories, but you probably never read any of my stuff. So how would you know that you would even want to work with me? You don't. You know, and then maybe just by personality, maybe it's just by drive and things like that, how enthusiastic, not just me, but anybody who's coming in and saying, you know what, I'm kind of dipping my toe into this field and I want to learn. I think there's value in that. Whereas if you come in and say, hey, I've got the greatest story on earth and who wants to be the artist for me, you know, and I don't have the money to pay you. It's really hard to be taken seriously in that sense. So, but I think speak to me about the people who might not have that budget, but they have the drive and they have the work ethic. How would they get your attention?
Travis, there's your guy to talk to.
They go through.
Talk to you about how to get the money.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at crowdfunding and doing that stuff, but not everybody's good at it. It's a lot harder than it looks. It really is. And building that I own a marketing company, so that helps a lot. But even before that is I am actively trying to build relationships with creators, and I'm not trying to just make like. I think people's instinct is they'll like message Andrea a lot. Oh, he works for Scott, he works for Caliber. Well, yeah, messaging him is great, and you can build a friendship with him, but he's on a level that he's doing stuff that he may not be able to give the time you need. Talk to people who are on your level and grow with them. And I don't think people do that. They're so busy messaging Todd McFarlane or Jim Lee or stuff. And I have friends who are on that level. But you've got to kind of see where you're at and be willing to accept where you're at. And I think that's a really hard thing is because they want to go to that next level. Because even like in here, someone creating their first comic, most people who've created comics were like, well, we don't take you seriously until you're 2 or 3 issues in, because a lot of people created issue 1 and then we never see them again. And it's not because we don't want to see them. It's just because they realize that shelling that money out, or they did exactly what Andrea said. They promised this person they would pay them on the back end. That back end money came. They did shipping. They did all these things. They realized there was no money on the back end, regardless of how much they raised. So it's way thing. You've got to be really in this for the long haul and really be committed to doing this, to building that relationship. And because of that, you have a lot of goodwill. Paying your artists is one of the greatest advices you could do because it helps you in every aspect. Any one of my artists, because they know how much I could raise crowdfunding and this and that, I now have a lot of leverage now that I've proven that I'm willing to pay them. But I would never ask them for a favor until I've learned to pay them. So now a lot of my artists who've worked with me go, hey, I can be paid half up front and then half on the back end. Or I'll be paid on the back end because I know we can do that because I see that. But you have to prove that to your artists. You have to be able to build that stuff. Collaborations work, but the problem with collaborations, if nobody's getting paid, one person is always going to have more of a drive than the other, just because it was somebody's idea. To get you guys both on the same page, you've got to put a little skin in the game. I don't care what that is. You've got to put a little skin in the game. Even if it's $10 a page, put something in the game to show that you are willing to do this, because I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. Now, the reason why I invited Ted Davies here is because I know that Albino Zulu and Retrieve is something that he wrote and did the art for himself. He did not collaborate on these projects. So it's like, okay, well, why are you here? And I did tell him that I was going to put him on the spot today. What's it going to take to get you to cut? Because we talked off screen and we're both somewhat of a control freak. What would it take for you to just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to look at your story and maybe do the art, not just the variant covers, but to actually do the art because you see a story that you're passionate about that isn't your own, or vice versa, where where you might write the story for somebody else's art because you have a distinct style. So that's going to be hard, I think. What would it take for you to kind of step outside of the box and open up to collaboration and being kind of like the ones, the people like me who, you saw my comic strip and I do a little bit better art, but not anything that I would ever call myself an artist with. Yeah, what would you do? What would you do to open up? What would it take?
You're asking as far as my intellectual property, dispersing it, delegating it to other people and have them possibly do the artwork is that what you're asking? Or are you asking me to take on somebody else's?
Well, I mean, what would it take for you to collaborate either because you do the artist, you are an artist, but you are also a writer. And so it's very easy for you to say, you know what, because I'm the control freak, I can do this on my own. And you have, But let's just say you wanted to stretch your wings a little bit and kind of play with the other kids, play with the natives
Sure.
out here in the
Sure.
wildlands of comic book making.
One of the things that, and that's a really good question. I think that, well, Luke, I mean, Luke and I collaborated with Hybrids, the picture behind me here, on Hybrids 5. That was good because it was just enough, I think, for both of us to enjoy the experience and have a very positive, just to have very positive interaction. It was a communication that I think I could handle as far as everything that's been going on with me. I know Luke wanted to do something special. So I think we achieved that. I'm pretty sure we did. But let me do this too. Exposure is always great, right? That's what they tell you. Oh, we'll pay you an exposure. Look at the exposure. And you can throw that out the window in some respects, but I think that you can barter copies of books, things that your name is on that you could possibly sell. Luke and I went round and round with that a little bit, and he was so gracious, and he was awesome. You need to have that regardless. First off, so let's talk about that. You need to have that humility standpoint, I think, from both sides, from the give and take. You got to have a yin and yang relationship. Not so that you are blowing smoke up people's butts, but that you, if I can be blunt, or you have to have it somewhat that you've got. You have to have respect on both ends. I think that there's people that have. When you start getting busy, you're going to have to delegate. And I told you this before off here. You got to delegate. One of the best moves I made was stepping back a bit. And that's one thing as an artist, you draw. And I know anybody who's picked up a pencil in art school or even in drawing and coloring book, and you step back and you look at it away from it, you're getting a completely different perspective. When you have another set of eyes on it, whether you're delegating now writing or whether you're doing whatever type of artwork, you're getting an honest opinion. Hopefully it's not too aggressive, with their critique, but you need to have that to grow. You need to be stretched a bit. And I think that I don't know if there's a list of things to collaborate that I would probably have as a checkoff list. You really have to go. You really have to go with your gut feeling. I mean, I tell people that all the time. Integrity is important. I don't mean that, but I check. I go back and I check people's work ethic, like you were saying, Andrea, and that I get that totally. But I really have to base my feeling on the way I am. If it doesn't feel right, then no, I won't do it. If I didn't feel right about Luke, I wouldn't have done it. If I didn't think I could provide it or deliver, I wouldn't have done it. And that scares me a little bit about Kickstarter, and it scares me about Indiegogo, because if I ever did that, I'd want to have somebody help me, because I would be concerned about having that influx of funds and being able to deliver on what we did, on what we planned on. So I think that collaborations are key. And I really don't think, I said this yesterday in the interview, I don't think that any of us are self-made. I think we all have people that are involved in our careers and in our lives that have helped us in one way or the other. So I think we are in collaboration, even if we are like me. I am a PhD in controlling. I've lost my mind controlling my artwork and who has their hands on it. And that's, and I think that's from being a kid that, you don't play with my toys, and that's just, but I'm getting better at that, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, I think collaboration is already what we do anyway, but.
Yeah. For me personally, again, when I'm coming out of the gate, because I'm a storyteller, and I always say, hey, I do have a story, and I have been able to imagine it into a comic book, and I see certain panels, not all of them, which is why I've kind of struggled with, at this point, how am I going to script it out? And that was in a previous panel as well, turning your story into a script and how important that is. Finding that editor, we spoke on that. But, for me, again, it's one of these things where, okay, I know if I'm being honest with myself and I'm coming out of the gate and saying, okay, I've got a story, I can imagine it. I kind of have that control freak kind of thing where maybe it's a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know if I don't know if it's going to be good enough to collaborate with anybody, so in a way, maybe I'm kind of dumbing down the process of looking for quality work, knowing full well that I have a good story, but it's like, is it worth, because maybe I don't have a pot to piss in. And so in the back of my head, I'm struggling with the idea of, well, it's my first comic book anyway. It's probably going to be crap. It won't be well received. Who's going to know about it? And I might as well just draw it out myself. And I see that. And I know it's a big mistake because I don't want to put crap out there on purpose because I had a terrible mindset about it. And Andrea, you've got the PhD here. Can you speak to the psychology behind that and that, maybe not feeling good enough to work with quality people or seek that out so that I could level up?
Well, the psychology, that's my wife's department, so I'm not going to touch that. But,
you need to talk to your wife. Yeah, please bring your wife in. I have a lot of questions.
So, I think what I would tell you is just, ultimately, as I'm listening to you talk, the first thing that I kind of zero in on is you said about the story. You think it's a good story. You think it's a good story. So why would you take that good story and waste it by pairing it with bad art? Mm-hmm. To me, I would bring you right back to the budget and say, okay, let's put together a reasonable budget. Let's say even something, I'm just going to pull a number out of my head here and say, let's say that we do $100 a page and we'll do pencils and inks. We'll make our budget. Since it's the first one, it'll be a black and white, $100 a page, and we're going to need to letter it. So maybe say $15 a page for that. So now you've got $115 a page collectively, and you multiply it times, say, 24, or even if you want to do just 20, make it, cheaper or whatever, so now you've got a target and you're going to need a cover on that. So you figure, let's splurge a little bit on the cover and say $200, So now you've got your figure. You got a figure. So now you pick up the phone and you call this man Travis. You pick his brain. And also I will tell you this is that one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. I read an article. This guy, I can't think of his name now, but he had a published book with Image. So you think most of us think that when you get a book published by Image, you've made it or just about to make it, right? And the summary of his article that he wrote was that, his book with Image was his most expensive hobby. His most expensive hobby. Okay. Let that roll around in your head for a while. And what I'm going with this is that if you're going to do this, this is going to be your hobby. So a lot of things, like for myself, I really don't buy comics anymore. I used to buy weekly comics every Wednesday. I don't do it anymore. Like my splurge, and some of these guys know it, have seen me at the shows. My splurge is where, like that guy, Gem City Comics. I don't know if you've ever seen him at the shows. They sell discount graphic novels. We're talking 5 for $20. Okay? So my splurge is if I have a decent show, I allow myself to go buy a couple of graphic novels from that guy. But otherwise all available funds are going into this. Right. So you have to understand, maybe I need to take a side job, a part-time job that all that money goes to this. I'm going to do some crowdfunding with Travis. I'm going to piecemeal it together, maybe take out, some of my savings if I have it, figure out whatever it is you have to do to get to that budget number. And then you do it. You're going to have to sacrifice. If you're not willing to sacrifice, don't even get started in this.
And if you're scared, start with an anthology.
Yeah.
Good point.
Great way to go.
There's tons of anthologies that you can be part of, and those are always collaborations mostly. Everyone knows that nobody's getting paid. So you can get at that a little bit, but you can start building it. And even right now, I have a Kickstarter, and this is not to promote my Kickstarter, so I'm not even going to share the link. But what I've done is I take those anthologies. Well, it's this Kickstarter, all it's really is to help gain funds to help pay for my project. There's no cons right now. Really, it's what it is. But what I did was I took my anthology stories, because I made sure anything I did, I owned, put them together in little books, and then allowed myself to do it. And I raised, I just launched it, and I'm at $700, which is great. And all that money is going to go is to it's going to go to Andrea, to make sure he's paid for editing. It's going to go to Luke, make sure he's paid for art, make sure everybody's paid, because that's the most important part, is getting people paid. But it also allowed me to collaborate with a lot of artists who are willing, who sees your vision, who knows that you're a good writer, knows you have this talent, and allows you to get your foot in the door to go, I am a published comic writer. That's all the credit you need. Andrea says about Image. I'm from Image. I actually have an Image book. Negative Burns was an Image. I have a story that was in an Image comic. But I have been declined by Scout. I've been declined by other companies. So that's not necessarily a marker today. It's not like once you're – a lot of people think that once they're in, that they're in. It's not the way it works. In fact, most of the time, you're only in for a couple of years and then you're out. It's how well you correct things. Colin Bunn is one of the biggest writers in the planet. He writes tons of books. Used to work for Marvel, DC. Now just works back into indie, because he just couldn't, for whatever reason, his stories didn't resonate in that.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the most difficult things about these panels is that there's so much that's interwoven in all of this stuff. When we're talking about, trying to stay on topic with, like, how do you find an artist to your writing and vice versa? It's almost like, okay, well, you have to know about the networking. You have to know about the Kickstarter, because people have to get paid for their talent. And, so it's just all of these things where it's really hard to stay on this specific topic, because they are so closely linked to everything else that needs to happen. And, so I'll speak to Kickstarting a little bit. I kind of put one out for my short anthology, not a comic book, knowing, actually believing, and maybe it was a self-fulfilling prophecy, I don't know, that it would probably fail, because I kind of put a higher level there to reach, and I had never done one before. So for me, it felt more like a learning experience, not realizing that that's going to be in my history. I'm like, crap, so I probably didn't put the best presentation out there for my book. But again, for me, it was more of a learning experience. It's like, hey, yeah, I learned so much from there. That's how I'm going to spin that. But I've heard so many people say that a lot of people try to have a full book done, that all they have to worry about at that point is shipping. And so that's when they launch their Kickstarter, because they can deliver immediately. Well, for somebody who's starting out, who might not have the funds, and they're still trying to network, that's not possible, obviously. So what can they do? When let's just say okay, I'm not having Chinese food this week. I'm going to use that $60 to pay for a cover. Is it okay to maybe start with a cover and just say, and maybe put a chapter or some of your words out there and say, okay, you know what, maybe I'm going to be a little bit creative here and just say, I paid for the cover. I've got some words out here. This is the story that I want to present. Go ahead, Luke. I think you know where I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what Andrea said and what Travis has said. You got to have a budget. And the most important thing is, like, this is how much it's going to cost. And understand there's going to be sacrifices in that. And the first thing you do is you get your cover and you get your first 5 pages done to completion. Because if you can show what the story is going to be, and you've got a good synopsis and you've got all those things, then you can essentially take that to crowdfunding. And that's also going to let you know, okay, this is how long it's going to take me to produce 5 pages. It's 24 pages. So I just need to add that extra time on there. This is how I can pay for that. Maybe I take in a second job and things like that. And it is possible to make money in independent comics as a creator, as a writer. but it takes time. The first few books, you're not going to make a whole lot of money off of. But over time, as you get your series together, working in anthologies and stuff like that, the more stuff you have out there, the more residuals you have coming back in. And it's, it's not always a sniper rifle or a scalpel with something. It's not like I'm going to write this story and it's going to take off and everyone's going to love it and I'm going to be famous. That's probably not going to happen. In fact, your first book is probably not going to be your best book. It's probably not even going to be that good of a book. If you work really hard, it can be pretty decent, but it probably isn't going to be your best. And it probably isn't even going to be that good. But you could start to work out different things, and you don't have to. And here's another thing I like to tell people that I work with. It's like, don't stick with a bad idea just because you paid a lot for it. If you get to the point where you're like, okay, this was a bad idea, let me try something else. Be willing to take that investment as, I pay a lot to go to school or go to college. This was the School of Hard Knocks. I've learned some things and take all of the things that you learn from there and adapt it into the new thing that you can do and things like that. So, but definitely start with that budget and then figure that out over time, because a lot of people, they want to get it done so fast and they are so excited to see it. But they don't think about what the cost is going to be to it and plan that out, plan ahead, plan, and then plan some more.
I think that's a great point and probably a future panel only because this is a business. And I think if you are creating a comic book or whether you're writing a book or whether you are cutting a track for music, if you're a musician or a band, I think it's really important to consider whether or not you want to do this as a hobby or if you want to do this as a living, because there's a totally different mindset for both. As a hobby, if I just say, hey, I just want to do this one-off thing just to say that I did it, it's a notch in my bedpost, whatever, I might not take it as seriously as me saying, hey, you know what, this is going to be the first of many, and I want to build up that reputation, and I want to have this catalog of stories and quality books, and maybe the first one isn't going to be great, but in my head, I think I have to kind of keep it positive, because if I say, oh, well, it's going to be crap at the beginning anyway, then maybe that effort might not be there. So anybody who's listening, who's ever thought about maybe stepping into this realm, I think you have to ask that question first. Is it a hobby, or do you want to try and make a living out of it, and put your stamp in the world with it? Does anybody want to speak to that?
Yeah, let me speak a couple things in here. So half of us, so one of the things that I want to just point out right here, just in this panel, 2 of us can make a comic without anybody else. The other 3 can't. So Meredith, when I say to you, when you look at Kickstarter but all 5 of us could write a novel. Does that make sense? Doesn't mean they're good. I'm not saying anything. Doesn't mean they're good. All of us know, I assume, know basic writing. Andrea, see my grammar, so maybe I couldn't, but the rest of you guys could definitely do it. So I think that's a big thing. So when you see big numbers on novels, that's why they don't do well on Kickstarter, is because people literally can look at their stuff and go, well, I could write that. It wouldn't take all that effort. They don't factor in any of the extra stuff as I have to take time for this. I research this, blah, blah, blah. They don't factor any of that because they just think if I wanted to write a novel, I could do it. So I'm just as good as you. So that's a problem with novels when you're doing Kickstarter. Now, when we talk about comics directly, yes, 5 pages is fine, but you've got to be in it to finish. Finishing is the most important part. For writers, it's really easy to finish, but for artists, it's really hard. So when you're talking about a first-time artist, finishing that book is super scary for them. And getting to them to that point is really, really hard, regardless of how good it is. A rookie artists are the worst to work for. You may have seen pages and pages of great stuff that you love from them, but the minute they're working on somebody else's stuff and not things that came out of their head, they panic and they lose their minds. You've got to be very careful, kind of building that trust. But the secret to comics as a whole is the reset. So, my comic, I can do a director's cut if I didn't like it, to change it up with just the lettering without changing the art, or I could change part of the art or add additional pages or things like that. Comics are known for rebooting themselves and doing stuff. And you can have a couple of different versions. You can have a black and white, you can have color. That's what's one of the greatest things about comics that you can't really do in novels and stuff like that. That's why something like Andrea's Shepherds is super scary to me. Like, coming out with a graphic novel, it's way harder to reboot that over and over again, right? You probably only got one reboot in you, a director's cut, add a few pages, maybe a couple stuff. But for individual floppies, you can do stuff. So if you don't get it right the first time, don't be afraid. There's a comic writer who's in our community who wrote issue 1. People said, hey, we don't really understand what's going on, like flat out, like, and not harmful. I don't understand what's going on. We sat with him. Issue 2 did the same thing. Still didn't work. Issue 3, people stopped backing him, and he got hurt and realized that, hey, this is going to be tough. He did fun, but a lot of it was really strong. But it finally clicked him that I'm going to have to go back and figure out my story because all these reviews are coming in that it's not clicking. He went up and made a director's cut, and by golly, when he launches his next kidder, I'm going to back it because I'm so proud that he took the initiative, listen to people's advice to try to make it better, because most people in the industry do not want to hurt you. If Andrea broke down and said, hey, this didn't work or this story didn't work, I'm going to listen to him. If Ted Davies, same thing. I don't even know. I haven't even read a Ted Davies book. If he took the time out to give me some feedback, I'm going to want to hear that and hear that feedback. You may not agree with it. That's fine. But if they take the time, there's something there. And there's people at different levels. I'm the opposite of Andrea. I read tons of comics every week. I feel it's very important for me to be in the know of what's going on in the industry because this is what I want to do. So I read as much comics as I can, Marvel, DC, Image, Scout. And yeah, it sometimes makes my comics come out slower, but I want to know the way to tell these stories the best I can. I want to be an expert, and it's doing my research. So that's my feedback for that.
I agree with that.
Very cool. Anybody else want to speak to that?
One of the things too, if I can interject, with when you're treating this like a business and not a hobby, as like you were saying, it's like anything in life. If you treat it like a hobby, it'll pay you like a hobby. If you treat it as you're a CEO and that you're actually producing a product that will be meant for resale and branding, you're diversifying in different fields. Ted Davies Artistry's YouTube, however you do your businesses. The outreach, the education, like Travis was saying, in different reading other people's works and that, the outreach is really important. And I'll tell you, everybody on this panel, in fact, the first person I contacted was Andrea, probably about a year and a half ago. And I said, hey, I got a great idea. Hey, well, how do you do editing? How do we submit work to your company? What do we do? And the nice thing about everybody that I know that I've curated my life around now is they actually gave me an honest idea. Andrea wasn't rude. He wasn't short. He says, well, this is what we do and this is what can be done, but you have to do ... in order to get this achieved. Or for me to even look at it, I think that, there's been other people, I might be paraphrasing, but along those lines, the thing about when you reach out to certain creators and they actually give you feedback, and it's not in an arrogant way, that's as much of a validation to me as it would be them to read my entire book and actually appreciate it. The 30 seconds it took just put me on a little bit different trajectory. Travis I contacted after Rob said, hey, I've been trying to find podcasts that I can listen to that possibly would showcase my work in time as it's produced. Rob's like, well, maybe Travis might know somebody. So I got a hold of Travis. Travis got back with me. And this is like, a course of a year and a half, whatever. You guys probably don't remember it. But for me, it was a big deal. I mean, and so when you're a new person, in my background, I did 30 years in architectural work in Detroit. It doesn't get any harder than that shit. When you're dealing with people that I understand the cutthroat, how people can be, everybody's in competition. You need to get away from that mentality and start reaching out. Luke was awesome. Luke, from the get, he was extremely open about what he could do financially, what he appreciated about my artwork, what he didn't not necessarily want. And you have to look at it from a standpoint of what's the good that you can take from each relationship that you meet, whether it's financial or whether it's you're just, it's a learning curve. And not be you have to have thick skin, but if it's to the point where they're being just ridiculous and rude and everything else, cut them loose. Don't listen to them. Go to somebody else. Get somebody in like Brian K. Morris that's going to promote, give you the best of what they can give you. Not, like I said, not make you feel like you're completely snowed, but you're learning, and you have to. But first off, you've got to treat it like a business. You have to. If you have to sacrifice, I know guys that have taken their cars in and sold their car to produce a series of books. I mean, I know people that have they've done all kinds of things to get to the point where they don't have to crowdfund. They can get their books published. In today's world, God, you could do it for a few $100s. But with editing and everything else, like these guys were saying, and that's really the way you should do it. I agree with what they were saying. Proofing is so important. It's not even, there's no argument with me about that. But you got to treat it like a business. Well,
I know that we are an hour in, and Andrea, I know that you have to get going pretty soon. Can you, before you leave, just make sure that we know where we can find you, what you're working on? I saw the video for what the heck, The Shepherd. I saw a video for The Shepherd, and I was just blown away by the presentation and everything. That alone just makes me want to buy the book, and I will be doing that. But if you could tell us where we can find you, what you do, a little bit about your work, and then we're going to set you free.
Well, you can certainly find me I'm on Facebook. You can contact me on Facebook. There's a Shepherd page on Facebook as well, at Caliber Comics ENT, the Shepherd at Caliber Comics ENT. Then the Shepherd Comic Instagram is a big one that I use quite a lot. So those are probably the two easiest ones that most people have an account for that. I do have a Twitter account. I'm not a big fan of Twitter. Sometimes I feel like that place is just really negative, so it's not my thing. But easiest way to get a hold of me. I guess what else did you need? I mean, in terms of
tell us a little bit about the Shepherd.
Yeah, my background, as I said, is in theology. My specialty is ancient Christian literature and history, and so I'm reading a lot of not only ancient Christian stuff, but a lot of the cultural writings of the Greco-Roman world, the Babylonian, Sumerian, Egyptian, Canaanite, that type of stuff. So I'm reading widely. And one of the types of literature that's very common, one of the types of stories that's very common in the ancient world is these otherworldly journeys. In fact, I tell people this all the time. The oldest piece of Western literature is the Gilgamesh Epic. It's a Sumerian story. And it deals with basically a superhero. Gilgamesh is a superhero. In fact, it's interesting how they describe it. He plays with regular people and breaks them. So imagine Superman playing football with ordinary kids in high school. It would not go well. And that's Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh has a good friend. His name is Enkidu. Enkidu is like a Tarzan-like character. He can speak to the animals. He can run fast. He has like all these abilities but he's like the ultra primitive man. And they end up striking a friendship up, and they get into a lot of adventures, a lot of horseplay and fooling around and doing things that they probably shouldn't do. And anyway, Enkidu ends up being killed by one of the goddesses for one of the things that they do. And Gilgamesh goes into the afterlife looking for the secret of immortality. But that's the oldest piece of Western literature. So that kind of literature, those journeys in the afterlife, the visits of heaven, hell, purgatory. I mean, these types of literature continued on into Western literature. Even things like the Dante's Divine Comedy, the Christmas Carol, those kinds of things. So I'm very influenced by that type of literature, and that's what The Shepherd is really a journey in the afterlife. And in particular, it's centered in a place called the Seam, which is purgatory. I decided not to use the term purgatory because people think they understand what purgatory is, and they flat out don't. I'm not saying that they've been there to know, but to say what it even has it been historically. What have people thought about purgatory? And so the characters exist in this middle realm, and they help other souls resolve issues that they have and move on from that place to whatever comes next in the afterlife. I've always been fascinated by ghost stories, but I don't like the scary, pointless, stupid ghost stories. I like ghost stories where a ghost is haunting something or some place for some reason. And once that reason gets resolved, they move on. I'm a big Guillermo del Toro fan. And my favorite piece of work of his is called The Devil's Backbone, which is all in Spanish, but you can see it in with English subtitles, which is how I've seen it. And it's an outstanding piece. But that's the kind of literature that the Shepherd is always telling these ghost stories about unresolved issues and how that plays itself out in the afterlife, what it takes for that soul to be able to move on.
And while I have you in the hot seat, what would be one piece of advice that you would give to a newbie writer who's looking for an artist?
Well, I gave you a lot of advice already about that, so I don't want to repeat what I've said, but
or just an overview, just a quick overview.
Yeah, I mean, I think it boils down to those things I said. You want somebody who's experienced, you want somebody who's reliable, you need to be able to afford them, and you need to be very honest about what your budget is. I can't emphasize that enough. You can't expect people to do the amount of work that is required to do the sequential art for free. I mean, that is a pipe dream and just ridiculous. And it's a recipe of not getting work done. Now, you might be able to do like what Travis is saying, like an anthology. You could maybe get somebody to say, hey, it's an 8-page story. Would you consider doing it with me? We'll get published for the story's been approved. I think we can get published, in Travis's anthology. Publishers used to do more of these anthologies, like Caliber, who I work with. Caliber actually had Negative Burn. We still have Caliber Presents, which is an anthology series. But I'll be honest, anthologies often don't sell very well. And so publishers are kind of adverse to getting involved in doing an anthology. But sadly, I think anthologies are a great way for newbies to break in because of all the reasons we've said. It's a small project. I've looked at anthologies where you have 4-page stories or even 2-page stories. And that's a great way to get a publication under your belt, learn the process of, working with a collaborator, with an artist or writer. It's just a great way to get your feet wet and figure out if this is something you want to do.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably a great way for studios to vet writers and artists too, without being fully committed to any one person.
Yeah.
Something to think about. Yeah. And I'm not booting you out of here. If you have to go, you have to go. I just want to make sure that people know where to follow you. Again, it's one of these things where this topic, it's so hard to stay on topic because everything is just interwoven interrelated. Yeah. And I'm finding it more and more interesting to, as a business side of things as well, because, I've done small business. I've been in retail. I've been in publications and things like that. So I'm familiar with a lot of these things. So I don't feel like I'm totally coming in out of the cold.
You're not. All those skills can come right in and help you. All the experience, that Ted had working in the architectural field, all that's valid. I mean, you learn how to deal with people.
Absolutely.
The simplest thing, you can't be a jerk to people and expect them to work well with you. I mean, come on,
that's indentured servitude. Yeah.
It's that whole don't do to people the things that you would rather that they didn't do to you.
Like the biggest compliment I get is when Ted's like, Luke was so easy to work with. I'm like, thank you.
You are.
People enjoy getting paid. My favorite part of doing the work of an editor is sending the invoice. It's
Right.
like,
Sure.
that's not true, but it's like it does feel good to do a good day's work and get paid for it. I mean, that's it feels like we all need that kind of sense of accomplishment, that sense of meaning and purpose in our life, that we're not just existing, that we're creating something. But yeah, great people write. Ironically, gets you somewhere. So,
yeah, and I have been ignoring the people. There have been people who are leaving comments here. Phil Locklear, I want to give you a shout out. Thank you for tuning in. Carl Witzman. We've got Eric Hawkins. Indie Creators Unite from YouTube. I can't remember your name off the top of my head. Let's see. We've got Facebook user, and I don't see who you are, but a couple of comments in here. Carl Witzman says, when the writer has an idea of how they want a character to look, how much do you let the artist suggest things? I've only been vague, so they would have some input.
For me, it depends on how much. See ya.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah. For me, it depends on how much ownership I want them to have. I mean, if I want it just to be me, I will basically, since I'll draw it, or I've even had people that can't draw, they've sketched out, this is what I want the character to look like. And then I just make it look pretty, and so, but I have no ownership in that whatsoever. I am simply just getting paid for a job.
Yeah, he was pretty hardcore with me though. He was like, you do it this way, Ted. That's it. Not really.
Like, dang it, Ted.
Not really.
Back to the drawing board.
No, I don't like that. No. What was your saying, Luke? You said something about where it do it your way, or I forget how you said it. You said it in those some of those terms, but I'm sorry, Travis. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. For me, that's the hardest thing in the world. It's the hardest thing is I'm obviously not an artist, but I have a certain idea of the want. And I've been doing this long enough that I want to pick my battles. So those are two things. So sometimes I'm like, I want this artist to be able to have really good character creation because I want to be able to use that leverage later and go, hey, this panel doesn't look good. I need you to redo this panel. So sometimes I have to balance that. But sometimes, like when we're doing, for instance, Voodoo Nations, that main character is so important. The coolness of the voodoo master in this book, Bishop Lucas, is more important than anything. But when I'm doing like Broke Down, it's a black guy and a white guy, dreads, not dreads. Like that's not important. I mean, I want them to look cool, but I don't need them to carry the book. The story is going to carry the book. But when you're talking about character driven or superhero driven, the character sells the book. No one would ever have picked up, Spider-Man or Batman if he didn't look cool.
Sure.
The reason why they've changed Iron Man all the time is not selling enough. Let's change his Iron Man. That's why they change costumes. How can we make these guys look cooler to sell more books? Because it's a visual art, so we've got to do that. So being vague doesn't really help you. But if you make it too difficult for the artist, it's going to add extra stuff. I've been doing this long enough that I know certain things artists don't like to draw on a regular basis. Like, hey, we need to know how this flows. One of the things that, and that's something we really want to suggest. When Luke and I were making Bishop Lucas, we were like, hey, we need to make sure he has a long jacket because that's super important flows. And even when we talked about the regular people, RJ is one of the main characters. She has a flannel around her waist, and the reason why is if she's running, he can add a little bit of movement, and those things are super important when you're spacing things out and you know where the story is going to go. We're going to have a lot of chase scenes, so how do we make that important and do something visually to allow that to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And Luke is just.
So being as descriptive as possible is probably a really good idea because you could always edit some of that out,
Yeah, and sometimes the artist hears, like, when they read your script, they also see things. Like I saw things about Bishop Lucas that Travis didn't. And so I was like, well, I'm thinking this, like for his face and like that whole like weird, like puckered smile. Cause he's got bad teeth. I imagine he had bad teeth. And so that he would always try to hide them in his smile. So he's got that real like tight smile. And so just things like that I started to pick up on.
And nobody's seen the teeth yet. The teeth are great. We have not showed anyone the teeth. They're fantastic. They're great teeth. And what I sent him, the character that I sent him, doesn't look like the thing. But I was like, he needs to look like this, and he needs to look like. I want him to have these characteristics and these movements, and that was enough for Luke to make a character that is his own. Because the Joker has a very specific set of movements. Green Goblin has a very set of movements when you see him in a comic book. Even though he's drawn a certain way, he can't move bulky. They've got to be smooth and silk when they move. And so those things are important.
See, and for me, the story that I have in mind that is going to be my journey here for my first comic book is actually a mermaid, but it's a very dark story. So again, when I'm scrolling through people's artwork, whether I'm going through DeviantArt or whether I'm going through the different Facebook groups and stuff, I'm actually looking for people because I know what I see in my head, and I can almost get snapshots of images around the internet to say, this is kind of the shape of the face, this is the hair and everything. But for me, it's kind of funny because I am specifically looking for somebody who can draw really good hair underwater and water.
Yeah,
that's
so
hard.
Yeah,
it's very hard.
And so that's very hard. And I was like, well, crap, I know that's going to be investment because that takes skill. And you know what? You're going to be paying for their, because they probably got the education and the time and the effort to get to that point. But for me specifically, it's like, okay, if I, I'm starting to make a list of people who's like, okay, I really like their art. I really like this about their art. I love how they do the hair. I love how they do the water, or even the background, the scenery and everything, because that is part of the story is, this inlet. So there's the water, there's the cliff, there's the trees and the forest and maybe animals kind of peeking around and stuff. And it's not cartoony. It's a very, again, it's a dark story, and it's kind of more on the adult side. I would say probably 18 plus, but just because of the content. And so I'm very conscious about who I'm putting on my wish list of people who might be able to do that cover that I see or that scene that's in my head. And again, it's like one of those things where my story is not scripted at this point, but there are bits of it where I know the scene. I know exactly what that panel is going to look like. And unfortunately, I don't have the skill to draw it out. I mean, I could try, with my stick figures and stuff like that, and then pass it off to an artist. And, so that's kind of like where I am. I have to script it first. I have to figure out the panels and stuff before I would even approach the artist. But again, it's one of those things where I'm doing the research to go out and see who, what your strength is as an artist.
Sure, I understand that. When I'm writing in that, I'll end up, they call it storyboarding or scripting or whatever, but I'll end up doing small. I want something to look so different from anything else that's out in the marketplace, whether it's digital or I just want it to be, okay, we know it's Ted. Even if it's subjective and they don't like it, well, we know that's Ted's work. You know what I mean? I don't even have to put my name on it. Oh, okay, I got it. I know. It's like Mike Mignola. You know his work. You see it. You know exactly who it is. You might not like him, but you know it. And everybody's going to have your certain style, but that's the way when I'm writing, I'll maybe write a couple sentences of that page or that concept. And then I start sketching out and I'll start throwing some watercolor on it. And then I'm like, oh, I don't like that. Yeah, I do like that. The best thing about watercolor paper and any paper for that matter is there's two sides to it. So if I don't like it, I'll flip it over and start fresh, So, but don't, I would suggest doing some character creating. Do something. If it is a stick figure, good. Draw it up. Get it figured out and then send it out to people if they're willing to help you. If not, that's on them. But right. I would suggest you just go with your gut, like I said. But try to get some ideas. If you like that, you like the backgrounds of that person. Make sure, like you said, you're taking notes and you're doing it, or you like this technique, or you like the way that this water or the hair flow, whatever. And then, show. One of the worst things and the best things I think that people have done, in whether it's in architecture or whether it's in fine art and that type of thing. Now, what I do is send me links to Pinterest constantly. Pinterest is like the Antichrist. Sorry, Luke. It is awesome, but it's bad because it's like there's so many images. It's confusing.
You said that like I like Pinterest. I don't like Pinterest.
But
it'd be awesome if he pulls out Revelations. He's like, "You are correct. I just read this today."
Actually, in the Greek and Hebrew,
right? Yeah.
Antichrist is a direct translation to Pinterest. It's so funny.
Anti-pin. That's funny. That's funny. I sent him a Latin Latin sentence today. That's funny. Yeah, Pinterest is Latin for so we know. But yeah, that's it. That. Do your due diligence. So get your stuff together and get your portfolio together so that you can share it with the concept artist, whoever it ends up being, or artists. So.
Yeah, and your concept artist doesn't have to be your sequential artist either.
Correct.
Correct. I do concept art for people all the time.
Me too.
Because they like the way that I like to create, like the way I design a character. Right. So they're like, hey, I really want you to design these characters for me. And so I'll do that for them.
And they're pitching. They're looking for so they can get their portfolio together to pitch the story to whoever. Because there might be a publishing house or there might be a script or something that's coming up that they need to have some type of background that they can present to people that are paying for it or people that are going to buy the rights or what have you. So
and be fans of artists. Like really, it helps a lot if you're going to pitch someone. Yes. Be a fan of that artist. One of my favorite artists is Carl Merlin. He created Frey and Buffy. It's a lot of Buffy work, Avengers Arena, stuff like that. I have a huge portfolio of his stuff. And when I finally did Brokedown, I was like, hey man, can I get a cover from you? And we talked about it and he knew my budget. He knew this is my first time, but I have been a fan of him for so long and built this relationship and not just making sure I take care of him. I saw him at events where he had free signings, free sketches. I would always give him $10. I would always give him a little bit to just honor what he's doing because being a fan is going to help you. Luke and I just got a fan, someone who we're super excited about, Stan Yak. Luke doesn't even know this. I'm going to tell him right now. Stan Yak has agreed to do a cover for Blue Nations. We're huge fans of Stan Yak. He's fantastic. He's an amazing artist. But he's also a fan of us because of what Luke's done and what I've done in Kickstarter. So you're building these relationships.
Wait, what?
What?
Did you just get that? Did you just
was drawing?
What did I? Fan of us? I see you. Well, I don't know what I've done.
It's probably a fan of me.
I've done mistake. It's probably just you.
Yeah, he's a fan of us. Maybe it was the royal us. I don't know.
I don't know. Who knows? I don't care.
Just take it. He's gonna read the book and see your art because his cover's on it. We have to send him comps, so it'll be fine.
It's gonna have it. Well, whether he likes it or not, it's in there now.
Right. But what's cool about it is we build these relationships, and then people want to help you succeed. They do. Yep. If you put it out there, Meredith, you're like, hey, I want to do this story. I'm a little intimidated. Can you guys help me find an anthology? There's tons of anthologies that I get offered on a regular basis that I would love to send to people that aren't good fits to me. If you have a special interest, and I'm not trying to devalue anything, but LGBTQ, all that, they have anthologies literally every week. I swear, like there's so many of them. Suicide prevention, anything that's kind of special or really a passion of yours, there's an anthology for it that you can be part of, which is really
very cool. See, and Luke, you are sharing what you've been working on.
There you go. That's cool, Luke. Sweet.
Because I'm an artist, and if I don't get the work done, the writer's going to kill me.
Sure. Well, you keep your timeline, man. That's part of being professional. That's what you do.
You see how I made 7 pages with tons of dialogue on that page? It's going to be great. It's going to be just a wall of text.
That's why there's not a lot of backgrounds in there. There's a couple backgrounds like in here, like here we've got a lot of backgrounds down.
Yeah, we got a lot. Yeah. We're gonna need it.
But we got all this open spot for people to talk.
Because I'm
learning so much just by seeing these, and again, it's a common theme. Networking is one, and read the friggin' comic books so that you can see how other people do it. Because I've seen them, again, going online and doing the Google searches and things like that, that these pages don't have to be just panel, or, side by side, or, I've seen some panels which were absolutely beautiful where it was just kind of like at an angle. And so you had like maybe a half of the page diagonal cut, and I don't know the terminology, guys, so bear with me, but where it had that scene and then it flowed down, to the bottom right inside cover, and then it flowed to the next page. So I mean, like every week I'm learning something new where your bottom right outside page, your page 4, let's say, no, page 4, right?
Yes,
I think
all,
so.
all the
so that's got to be like the hanger so that people will want to turn the page. So there are certain things that I'm learning, and again, it kind of takes us away from the actual topic of this was, like how to find the right artist for your story. But it's so, again, it just speaks to this inner web of, it's just all connected that you can't help but talk about those other things.
Sure.
Well, it's really hard. Like this, there's a lot of dialogue on this page. This is going to be really hard. This is going to be Jerome. And sometimes you don't see it. And sometimes you allow yourself to flow, because what I may have to do is I may have to cut some of the dialogue to make this page work because I want to show more of Luke's art. And sometimes that's for the betterment of the page, and sometimes it's not. And it's a crapshoot. But be willing to accept that and be willing to work with your art, to make this happen. This is a little heavy dialogue, but Luke uses a layout artist, and that layout artist is really, really good. And not only is he really, really good, he a couple of times said, Travis, you have a lot of dialogue here. We need to do it a couple of different ways, and that's great. That allows us to have those conversations, and that makes it so Luke doesn't have to have that conversation, which would take away from his writing because he has to wait till I'm available. And he's not doing church services. So those things help to get this going. I apologize that this is such a boring page to be showing.
No, it's great. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm looking at that now with new eyes, and I go, oh, okay, dialogue goes there. Is it going to be like, and again, I'm learning the terminology. I'm doing my homework, but is it going to be?
I'll show you guys.
Is it going to be a box for a narrator or something? And so I'm seeing the possibilities of like where dialogue could go, and just looking at the panels, like, okay, who's talking or who's thinking, and so I'm trying to get that critical eye developed for this, so that when it comes time to, I want to say storyboard, and Rob's going to kill me, but it's the terminology that I know. But you guys know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
I'll be honest.
I still call it storyboarding, so whatever.
Yeah.
I got your back on that.
I call it thumbnailing or layouts.
It's layouts or thumbnailing.
You're right.
Is the proper term, people. But here, let me share my screen, Meredith.
Okay, so but when I think of a thumbnail, I'm thinking like each one of those squares, each one of those boxes is a separate file. So when I think of thumbnail in my head, that's what I think of. I don't think of that entire page. All right, we're going to pop in Travis's. Let's see how this works.
So I want to show you. So these are the panels that will go there. So thought number one is that's the first speech bubble. Number two, as you see, there's a lot of words there. If you go back to Luke and look at his first panel, we've got to fit all that dialogue in that small little spot.
Yeah.
We are going to have to cover over that. So go back to Luke for a second, just to show you. Because so there's going to have to be two bubbles here, both her and him, but we cannot cover up the bottom. We can't cover up the food because we have to show what they're doing. So we can cover up.
And that text that you're putting on there originally on that, Travis, are all those words going to have to be in those bubbles, or does part of that artwork that Luke's putting together spell out some of the wording that's in that line?
that's up to the letterist, but yeah, it'll probably go outside the line. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to throw in a different layer here, and I will just show you where probably those bubbles will be. So the one of them is the one where it says where Brent is talking, right? Can you go back to the text for a second?
Do you want me to just message you the text? I can copy and paste for you.
Okay, so it's saying so Brent is talking in panel 1, and then RJ is talking in panel 1. Okay, yeah. So here's how this will probably go. I've got this.
RJ needs to be bigger.
Yeah, RJ needs to be bigger, and so we'll probably do. I'm not the letterer on this one, but there'll probably be a bubble here, and then there will probably be a bubble here and here, broken that up into 2, so that. If I were to imagine, that's probably what the letterer will do.
Right.
Most likely.
Yep.
To fit that in there.
Or it'll be down in the corner here, depending on how much in the right corner that bubble, how many that one needs. So that would be panel 4. Let's check what panel 4 needs. Because again, these are all the decisions. Yeah, number 4, there's only one small thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it may go down there.
So you have a lot more white space. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, that's panel 3. Hold on, I'm sorry. It's the way
and then, let me go back to the script because again, like now I'm looking at this like I'm a starved person because everybody that I've talked to has a different way of doing a script. Nobody has one way of doing it, so I'm like, okay.
Meredith,
there's 4 comic scripts.
Apples. Travis and I do it the right way.
Now, see, I put in, when I was doing scripting, I would actually take a and I know you're working on it, Luke, but I would actually take the picture of that that panel, and I would actually copy and paste it into that or underneath or alongside that statement, whatever line that you're putting in, so that people, whoever's doing the artwork, can it's an extra step, and you're not done with the art to begin with, but I'm just saying that's how I've been doing it, and it's a real, you're laying out things 6 different times, and it's a pain, but it's idiot proofing the whole thing. You can go in and say, I know exactly where this is going to go. You're doing it the right way. You're doing fine, but I've become kind of ridiculous when it comes to that kind of scripting, but.
So this is my guess where the bubbles and stuff are going to go.
Yeah. And again, it's just one of those things where there's so much involved in the creation of a comic book. That's why I kind of gave myself a year because I want to understand the terminology. So when I say something like storyboard, and if it's the wrong term, whereas, okay, I have to switch the thinking into that's a thumbnail now. So that I can be on the same planet with my artist, or just to have that foundational thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love this series, because I was talking to Rob the other day, and I told him, I said, I'm not going to be the noob forever. This is kind of like the first leg of the journey. At some point I get to graduate. And he goes, so in my head, I'm going, okay, well, if I do, let's just say I do 50 panels, and, that's 50 weeks where I am hosting these panels. I'm learning, and I'm hoping at the end of that, where I can speak a little bit more clearly and help somebody else who might be starting the journey, and just say, I was there not that long ago, so let me help you. And that's just so exciting for me, because that's the thing that I love to do. I love helping people, and if I do that by sharing my journey, that just makes everything worthwhile. And again, this just speaks to my creative nature, because it's so many things where I do love to draw, but I will never say that I'm an artist, and I will never say that I'm good, but it's something that I enjoy doing. And when I was watching Luke do his live draw yesterday, I told him, I said, I feel like getting out my Sharpie and just starting to draw something, anything. I don't care if it's doodles or flowers and things like that. and break them out again because they've been collecting dust for, a couple of years now.
Well, and
so
here's the thing, Meredith, too, that I want to point out to you that's going to be shocking. So even though there's literally 4 comic script writing techniques, and I can show you all 4 if you want. In fact, you should probably do a panel of that where we can talk about them. But there's also the same thing for artists. Like some artists, I don't know about Ted. Ted, do you like to do all the layouts first, or do you go page by page?
It depends on what I'm doing, but it depends on how what I'm working on. But yeah, absolutely. I'm an architectural background, man. Everything's planning. Everything is planning. So,
do you ever find? Sorry, just to interrupt really quickly, but because of your architectural background, do you find that you tend to be very linear?
I do. That's what I designed outside the box for 30 years, and I'm stuck in a box now trying to figure out how to lay it all out. So it's kind of and I jokingly say this to Luke and Travis, but this is God's sense of humor, because it's you're completely opposite of what you're trying to do for the last 3 decades. Now it's really challenging. But you are. Yeah, the planning is. Yeah, go
ahead, Travis. I'm sorry I interrupted.
You're good. What I was going to say is, so Luke wants to do layouts on every page. The guy who does Broke Down, because we've been working together for so many years, he literally just sends me finished pages. They're 100% finished. And then I edit them as stuff. And sometimes that's great. And sometimes I'm like, can I see a layout, man? Like this is important.
Yeah.
But each artist is different. And if I mess up his creativity or I mess up the way he does things, you can tell it slows down production. Mm-hmm. So sometimes as the writer or as the producer, you have to let them do their style and then you have to adjust. So it's better if that was the case. Let's say I was working with Ted and Ted was just giving me pages like my artist, but we keep doing repairs or fixing this panel or fixing that panel. I can then go to Ted and go, hey, why don't we do some layouts for a little bit? Yeah. But I don't have that problem with my artist, so we've never had to do that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Luke and I kept, even for the Hybrids 5, we kept going back and forth. I was driving him crazy, I'm sure, because I would message him, say, hey, I got this. I sketched out something quick. And I'm like, okay, what do you think about this? I gave him like A, B, or C. What do you think? I like A better. I never thought about it doing that way, which I didn't know if that was like good or bad, but I took it as good. Never thought about doing it that way, which is like, throw that one out. Okay, it's gone. See ya. But I think it worked out well. But like you said, the communication, it's key. If you're looking for layout, I mean, there's got to be some give and take there. I mean, I think that's. I mean, what do you think, Luke?
I like to work with layouts on everything I do. That way, there's less editing when it comes to drawing the page. I want to draw the page, and so I want to pencil and ink the page because I can do a page in about 2 to 4 hours if I'm working at a good clip. I can do about 9 pages of pencils and inks a week if I'm not real busy with church. If I can put about 20, 25 hours into it, I can really crank pages out if I get in the zone. But it pulls me out of the zone if I have to keep changing the layout. And so I'd rather go through and do all the tedious work of having the layout done. Either I do them myself or I have someone else do it who's really talented. Like Brian Dawson does my layouts for me because he's really talented at laying out the page and he knows what I'm looking for. And he knows how I draw my figures and stuff like that. So he kind of puts he does a lot of the heavy lifting for me on some pages. Like this one, he did a lot of heavy lifting for. He threw in those really nice backgrounds, and I'm like, I'm just gonna pencil on top of that and take that as my
awesome.
So I didn't have to fill in a whole lot of that stuff. So I could just do this page. And so I started this page this morning, and I've worked. Oh no, wait, I think I started it last night. And I just did a quick pencil and then started inking it. And so I've only worked on this really for about an hour last night, and then for the time that we've after we were here for about a half hour, so maybe an hour or so here. So I was able to knock those things out quickly because the layout was already approved, and so I don't even have to think about it. I can go into autopilot. But at the first stage, I'm thinking script. Okay, let's make sure the script is good, and we know what we want to do in the script. And then we take that to the layout, and then we make sure that our page turners are where they need to be, that we have our exciting things. Like, even though that this is a page 8, we do have a page turner thing down here, but there's kind of this conflict that's happening here. So it doesn't have to be a real exciting panel, but there's conflict that's taking that. You think it might be some conflict that's happening down here in this bottom panel where it's like, hey, why are you guys leaving kind of thing, and then you get a chance to turn the page and go into the next stuff. So I want to look at the page that way That way, when I start getting into the art, I can just get into the art and just do it and start cranking the pages out. So the layout work is the hard work, and I can do all that stuff myself too. But I have a lot of other things going on, and I would rather have someone else that maybe might be a little better at that than I am take on that weight so that I can focus on something else.
You're delegating. Yep.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, I think that's also another thing, that Ted and I were talking about before, is the delegation of work. For me, again, this new journey to try and get my story into a script, into a layout, into pencils, inks, forward thinking to variant covers and things like that, because it's going to be awesome. As awesome as it could possibly be.
But don't fall into that. Don't fall into the trap of over analyzing. I know Luke and I do this, where execution doesn't happen, and planning and planning and planning, and then the house is never built. You know what I mean?
Right.
So use an architectural analogy, but that's. You try to make it to the point, like I said, I get a set date and I work towards that for some type of cutoff to where, okay, we're going to get this done by this date, and just do your best to and learn as much as you can and execute at that moment.
Full disclosure, guys, when I was taking my story and I was thinking, okay, how am I going to script it? Because I am a visual person. Okay. I was taking bits and pieces of the dialogue because I love writing dialogue. I was taking bits and pieces of the dialogue and I was putting them on sticky notes.
Sure.
And I was actually taking them and I was laying them out on my notebook.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, is that like a totally newbie thing, or is that a good idea? I'm like, I don't know, but it works because I can actually take this and I can move it around the page. So that's how I'm kind of doing this, and
dry erase boards, and I tell you, I've got like 6 of them lined up, and each one of them have a layout, and it's And I think that's definitely. I've got so much material for the future panels. Next week is actually going to be where we're going to be talking about the critical pieces of the comic book. I think that's going to encompass layout. It's going to encompass terminology and things like that. So, I'm just kind of putting this out there while my dog's barking, that I will be looking for guests for that panel who can talk about the technical aspects, the layout aspects and things like that. And just really kind of, I guess for me, finding a standardized glossary of terminology that I should know going into this and speaking to people who are in the business. So there's that. But we're at an hour and 48 minutes, guys. And, I just want to kind of go around again. And if you want to sum up something or add anything to how to find an artist or how to find the writer for your next project, coming in as a newbie who might not have that networking aspect quite yet. Let's just assume that networking is a given. You have to do that. Get into these groups, start talking to people. As Travis was saying earlier, become a fan of the people that you might want to work with one day. And if not work with them, then at least, support them, share out their work and stuff like that, because they do appreciate you. Yeah, go ahead, Travis.
Let me add one thing for groups. So be careful with the groups you join too. So one of the rookie mistakes that a lot of writers do, which it breaks my heart every time they do it, they'll go into a find collaboration writer and artist group, and they'll be like, I have $20 a page. And then instead of someone saying, hey, that's not really industry standards, they will be insulted by every artist who has a stick up their butt that day and just really beat them down for an honest question. And some people just don't know. So try to join groups where you can just be part of a community and ask that question in a safe, community before you go out to a public forum where people are looking for work, because I think that could be very discouraging for people, and I've seen it so many times.
I've actually,
I think that's important.
I've actually seen that, Travis. I was in a couple of groups that I haven't left them yet, but I haven't gone back to visit, and not because I felt like I was being crushed, but I could see that atmosphere where anybody who was asking a question, a sincere question, was made to feel stupid. Yeah. And for somebody who doesn't have the thick skin, or they really want to know, and they just happen to join the first group that they found on a search and stuff, that could be devastating, and that could make them quit. So I agree 100%. Be careful of the groups that you join and the people that you surround yourself with, because it can make or break you.
Yep.
Yep. Any other last words of advice? We've got Facebook user. I'm sorry, I don't know your name here, but it says honor and integrity are worth more than gold when building a relationship creatively. I absolutely agree. And the Bronze Emperor pipes in with, I am super joyed to catch this topic. It is going to be on replay on the Geek Insider, and it's on OnCon. It is going to be on the Comic Book Advocates Network, and we are actually going to take this audio and we're going to put it on Podbean, which aggregates out to iHeartRadio and Spotify and wherever else you like to listen to your podcasts. So, and that's going to be under the Geek Insider podcast. So you guys can tune in all over the place, and then we're going to do a follow-up article and stuff like that. So we have all of the links to all of you guys on the panel, and that way we get some shout outs and some traffic to you guys too. Any last words?
Curate, make sure you're doing what you want to, and listen. Keep your ears open.
And man, it's just comics. Have a good time with it. I mean, if it's not fun, why do it?
Why do it? Right.
People are going to tell you the right way. I joked about, we do it the right way. There's really no right or wrong way to do it. Tell the story, do the art. If someone enjoys it, then it's good. If someone doesn't like it, then try to get better. Maybe they'll like it next time. If not, just have fun making comics.
Try to inspire somebody. Yeah.
My scripts are written the right way. Luke is wrong. No, really, don't be intimidated to ask. Ask an artist what you want, pitch your idea. They may not be the right fit for you, but if I went to Luke and said I had a story, I know that he would recommend me to Brian Dawson. He may recommend me to Ted. There's all sorts of people, because some stories don't fit. In fact, while I was in this chat, someone offered me a story. They're like, hey, can you write a feudal Japan story? Here's my budget. I'd really like you to do that. And I was like, I hate that genre. It's not my genre. I could give it a try if you want, but I'm not a fan of it. So I don't think I'd be the best fit. And instead of taking that, I then put it to a group, and now the group's talking about, hey, would this work for me, or would this not work for me? If you're part of a community, they're going to look out for you and they're going to help you build. So don't be afraid to ask somebody, because they may be able to find someone in your budget that will work with you. But I really do feel before you ever write a full comic, go ahead and find an anthology story. Find the Advocator, find one of these small stories that you can do 4 or 5 pages and work with somebody, because a lot of times they'll even pair you up with people.
True.
Those are really, really good, and that'll help you get your foot in the door and allows you to do things. And really, people are looking at those anthology stories, so do it. And then it's going to help you when you have your Kickstarter, because you can say, I wrote this before. This is not my first time,
Right. And I've actually got a story that I pitched for Mississippi Zombie for the next anthology, and I basically I thought that because they said they had a call for stories, and I was just like, I've got a story, and they sent it back. They were like, okay, well, you need this, and this, to kind of fit in the genre that we're going, into this anthology. It's like, okay, so I did the edits and sent it back, and then they were like, okay, now we need a script. I was like, oh. Dude, if I knew that, So at this point, I don't know if that's going to be the first thing that I work on, because I have this other one that's more of the passion project. And I'm like, shoot, is it even possible to try and work on these two at the same time? Because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But, it is what it is.
The other thing to think of, Meredith, too, and I say this with all out sincerity, the things that I want to write, I haven't even started them yet. They're in a folder and they're ready to write, because I want to be a better writer. And I want to have a better creative team to write those stories. I want to have a top tier artist. I want to have top tier this. I want to be at this level before I even tackle those. So I'm writing stories that are good and that I enjoy and that I want to tell to the world. So don't misunderstand that I don't feel that way. But my best stuff is in a folder and it's not ready to come out yet. And it's okay, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because again, it's I don't want to pat myself on the back. I don't want to say I'm better than I think that I am, just to blow smoke or anything like that, But I do love storytelling, and when I say that I see these things visually, a lot of the times it's because I can either see it in comic book fashion as panels, or it's kind of a mix. It's like mixed media, where I see a panel, but I can see the live action and stuff. And I'm not saying that I'm scripting for that. It's just the way my brain thinks, so that I can process a scene and then try and take a snapshot from that and go, okay, that's more impactful. Yep. So, when it comes to having an eye for stuff like that, I do think that I have a bit of it. And so writing down these notes and getting that insight into your script, Travis, I might beg you to send me that script so I can just see how you format it, because that to me is important, is understanding format. Because when somebody says there's no standard to it, it depends on who you're working with. I'm like, well, that's fucking impossible. It's like, how am I supposed to do this? I need those boundaries and how I do it. So like trying to, for me, I want to come out of the box with a good foundation, but I want to have, I need that structure, and I need to formulate my own standards so that when I'm working with people also, because I know that I can't do it all on my own, and I said that earlier because I am a control freak. I like to be in control of the things that I see in my brain and my story and things like that. As a writer, I can self-publish and be done with it, but to actually take it to the next level and bring it into comic books or graphic novels, as Andrea does, it is a totally different level. And I don't want to put out a crap project. I want my first one to be quality, as good as it could possibly be. And so that's why I've kind of given myself this deadline, and why I'm sitting here with you guys, spending 2 hours of the day to learn. This is school for me. And I think anybody who's serious about it, who want to do this, they need to do the work. They need to do the work and find the people who are going to help you get to the next level. And I'm not saying that anybody who sits on my panel is somebody that I will work with, for whatever reason. I'm not saying that opportunity wouldn't be there later on in the future, but what they're doing is they're bringing their knowledge and their wisdom so that this becomes evergreen material for the next person who comes along, who watches this series and says, you know what, I want to get serious about this. How do I do it? Because honestly, going into these groups, there's so much material on YouTube and Google and everything. It's overwhelming, and you just don't know if you're going to be led down the wrong path. My purpose with this is to say, you are actually following my path, and take from it what you will. We've got some good lessons here. We've got a lot of good information, and I've just monologued the heck out of this. But Luke, I know that you have to get going. We are actually going to shut down here. So I just go around the room. I'm going to end the broadcast after you guys tell everybody where we can find you. Luke, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Luke Stone. You can find me at lukestonestudios.com, and all of my stuff is up there. I'll be updating that website real soon with some new information since some things have changed. So that's how you can find me. Right now, I do have Hybrids of Sons of Gods, issue 1 through 5, the final, the first complete arc on Indiegogo for about 4 more days. I'm about 5 backers away from getting 25. If I can get 25, you're going to get the first 5 pages of hybrid. I almost said Hybrid Nations. Melding them together now. Voodoo Nations.
Let's do it.
Voodoo Nations in color, the first 5 pages as a preview sent to your inbox. And so if I get to 25 backers, so I'm 5 backers away, head over to Indiegogo and you can type in https://igg.me/@/hybrids5 and you can find that.
Very cool. Ted Davies, let's do it.
You can reach me at teddaviesartistry.com. Check out Retrieve, my sci-fi thriller in Albino Zulu soon. Grim 101 will be coming out in July, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much.
All right, short and sweet. All right, Travis.
I like that. No, actually, hold on. Can we go back to Ted? Put him back on the screen.
Put him back.
Yes.
I was listening to Never the Furthermore, and I heard there was an announcement made last night that I don't know. What was announced last night? I need to know.
Well, my Retrieve book is in script for option now. I got a call from a producer in California, and we are scripting Retrieve for option to publishing houses out in California now, I guess. So that happened Wednesday of last week. So Retrieve is on. Thank you. Retrieve is on its way. So we will see. We'll see how it happens. So that was the
we
big
can
news.
say we knew him when.
I'll stop. You know
Yeah.
what? You know what? If it takes off, everybody that is in Ted's tribe is going to reap the benefit from it. And I know that. And I stand by that. So yeah, if anything comes from it, which I'm hoping it should, the ideas I've been blessed with is solid, and the people that I've got surrounding it now, Chuck included, Chuck Pino is involved now with as far as editorship and everything else. It's going to be an adventure. So
Retrieve is optioned. Congratulations.
So
Whoops. I didn't mean to do that. There you go, Travis.
thanks, Travis.
All yours.
Yeah, no problem. I want to celebrate people's success. I really do. We all rise together. I got your cover, your Ted Davies Artist Edition. I was really happy that was in my package. I didn't realize that was a free gift for everybody. I was like, dude, my man likes me. Luke likes me. And then I looked on the Kickstarter and found out that it was because we got a stretch goal.
So crushing.
Because I do, like, if you get a Kickstarter from me and I like you as a creator, I'm just like, I really want him to have this cover. I know he didn't pay for it, but I really think he'd enjoy it. So I'm throwing it in there.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
I stuffed some extras in there for you.
I'm sure you did. Like, I got all sorts of goodies. There was tons of goodies in there. But that artist edition specifically, I was like, is that special for me? Anyways, Broke Down in 4 Dead Bodies is where you can normally find me. A brand new website just opened up, though, for me and Luke and Andrea. It is voodoonations.com. So if you go to voodoonations.com, that is live right now. I really encourage you to take up Luke's offer that he just told you about, that offer because you can bid $1 on his Indiegogo. So if you've already backed Hybrids, but you're really interested in this Voodoo Nation thing, give them $1 and you're going to send it. That's the first time you're going to see it. So that's a very exclusive sneak peek, and I really want people to see the story because we've been working really hard on it. We've got a deadline in July, so we're basically Meredith just in a month, right? Meredith is going over a year. We were trying to create a book in a month. So we've been doing it a little bit longer. But so that's really cool. I also have a Kickstarter live right now, Parallels. Again, not only do I want to encourage you to back Parallels, what it's for there, I'm going to be 100% transparent. It's a whole bunch of anthology stories. I've combined them together so you don't have to buy the $20 volumes that they're normally associated with. all collected in a small, floppy. What's cool about it is all the extra money, besides printing and shipping these books out, because I'm only going to keep like 20 or 30 copies for myself, goes to fund things like Voodoo Nations, Broke Down in Four Dead Bodies, Cthulhu Invades Oz, these really cool things that are coming down the pike. And it's a way to do that. And I really encourage, if you're an artist or a writer, start doing this with anthology stories. It's worked out really well for me. It's only been up a day, and I'm at $700, and I didn't expect that. Like,
Wow.
I expect to make my 500 over the course of the time.
Fantastic.
People really want to read my writing, even though they're reprints. They want to support the projects that I'm working on, and this helps get the projects that they really like into their hands faster.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Very
awesome.
cool. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw me in the background. I was like looking around my desk, and I'm like confined by my earbuds here. But I have a copy of, I think it was Brevard County, with an article with Travis Gibb in there, and I just wanted to show.
Cool. So cool.
I was in a magazine, not to
Awesome.
Yes,
that's good.
Yes, so he can say that too.
That's good. We knew him.
Yes.
When. That's right.
So I'm going to end the broadcast, guys. Don't go away, because I want to ask you a couple questions in the green room. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Comic Newb. Next week is going to be basically, we're going to be talking about terminology and the critical elements of a comic book. So if you want to tune in, otherwise we're going to be on replay. Talk to you later. Ending the broadcast.